Alrighty, we're gonna go the easy route this time. I don't have my cameraman, and the last time I put together a bunch of videos and the wind was so bad that you couldn't hear anything. So on one of my last videos I did hitching and kind of the beginning of the day routine, gathering your animals and yoking them up, and we'll just go over the end of the day routine just really quick. Obviously it's kind of a reverse of what we talked about earlier. First thing is, it's always a good habit to make sure that you brush the animals down. It's, you know, should be a nice treat for them at the end of the day. And then also, we tell a lot of 4-H kids, I mean, that's the easiest way to consistently keep your animals fairly clean. So you want to make sure that we're brushing them down. If we had halters or anything that we took off, or collars, we'll put those back on. And then there's an important step before we actually take the yoke off of them, and this should be, it's a good idea that this is done from the time you start training them. If you get them when they're a couple days old or a couple months old or whatever that time frame is, it's really important that you do something, and that's picking up hooves. And even as the animals get older, these guys are older, but I still do it every time before we unyoke them. And we do that for a couple reasons at the end. First of all, they should be a little bit tired, so we've worked them, so they're going to be a little bit more willing to lift up their feet. But the second reason is that if we ever have to pick up their feet, we want to be able to do it. That might be because we have a problem. Maybe they're, you know, we want to inspect their feet. We want to take a rasp and just rasp their feet down. It may not be a full trim, but if we do it a little bit at a time, we can keep their feet trimmed correctly. And you know, I'm not a farrier and I've never shoot a horse, but I've seen lots of people do it. These guys will never stand like that and allow you to manipulate their feet like a horse would, but they will allow you to pick them up and take a look at them and trim them as needed. And you want it, they're draft animals, so it's an important thing to do, to train them to do it. That's something you should be doing every day at the end of the work day. Now, there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. Well, I wouldn't say a right way and a wrong way. There's an easy way and a hard way. So the easy way, which I see a lot of people have never been taught, is to actually push on the animal, pinch the dew claws, and they'll lift their foot up. And I'm going to show you that here in a second, because a lot of people try to go and grab their feet and lift them up or twist them, and you've got to understand that they're going to get out of balance. You know, it's not comfortable for them, and you're making it kind of almost a punishment. So you got to make it easy for them. So let's show you that now. All right, we're going to try to do this one-handed. I'm going to show you picking up feet. An easy way to do it. First of all, you want both hands available to do stuff. So whether that's hitching a cart, that's yoking them up, stick or whip goes in the back pocket. That's always the best place to put it. It's always the best place to put it for a couple reasons. If we put it on the animal's shoulders across the yoke and they move, we have to go grab for it. If we put it on the ground, they step on it. Obviously they could damage the stick, or we've got to move their feet anyway to get the stick off the ground. So always the best place is in your back pocket. That way you have two hands free to do whatever you need, whether that's hitching to a cart, a stone boat, log scoot, or yoking and unyoking them. That way it's always with you. So those are step up, those are step up. Okay. Oh, stand. So picking up feet. All right, so you got to remember that an animal's hoof and their leg obviously hinges this way. That's the easiest way for them to pick up their feet. And I see a lot of people, if I judge a showmanship class in a open or 4-H class, a lot of the people grab onto the hoof above the dew claws and they try to pull it out and up, or try to yank it up. Now, all the animal's weight is fairly evenly distributed on their 4 feet. So what we need to do is we need to transfer the weight on the opposite side of the animal from the opposite side of the foot that we're picking up, or the hoof that we're picking up. So the first thing that we want to do, and this should start when they're anytime you're going around them in the barn, they're tied up in a yoke. At the end of the day, it's always a good idea to do this regularly. And they'll get to a point where they'll just let you pick up their feet. So first thing we need to do is let them know that we're there. So we rub down his leg a couple times, okay? And then I give them a command of foot, so I'll say their name and then foot. And then what we do is, instead of just grabbing them and try to yanking them up, we're going to first take your shoulder and push it against the animal. And that's going to transfer their weight to the other side. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take their dew claws and squeeze them. I'm not pulling, I'm just squeezing the dew claws. And they'll automatically pick up their foot. So a couple steps. We're going to push on him, transfer his weight. I'm going to squeeze his dew claws. and catch his foot, and he's going to do it on his own. Okay. Now normally also I'd give him the command, so dozer foot, push him, squeeze, dozer foot, and he picks it right up. Okay, so now if there's a situation where you have to pick up a foot for whatever reason, you want to trim it, you have to show a judge, there's a problem, you suspect a problem with the foot, it's really better for the animal and for you to be able to inspect it that way, so that you don't have to rely on someone else or tie them up or you know, put them in a stock or something like that. I'll show you the same thing with the rear feet as well. Okay, so it's the same principle with the rear feet. So I'm going to rub down his leg a couple times, let him know that I'm there. Shoulder, push over the opposite side, squeeze the dew claws. Now on the rear feet, even if you have older animals that you've been doing this for a while, even these guys, I do it pretty much every day after I work with them, they're still not going to stand there for very long with their rear feet up. I can do it enough to trim them and to pick them up, to inspect them, but it's kind of a constant. I'll hold them up for a few seconds or a minute, trim them, and then put them back down. So you've got to give them that rest. So we're gonna rub down his leg, let him know that we're here. We're gonna push on him with our shoulder, push him over so the weight's on the other side of the animal. Squeeze the dew claws, dozer foot, dozer foot. Good boy. Oh. And he's gonna hold up his foot for us. Okay? Now sometimes it's a game to see how long he'll hold it, but he's doing pretty good. We worked him, so he's a little bit tired too. And we'll just gently put his foot back down, okay? And let him rest again. So start by doing that a couple times, or every time after you work them. When they're tied up in the barn, when they're calves, when you first get them, that's something that's a really good habit to get into. It's part of the training process. Again, and we already talked about the reasons why. Now, you may get into a situation where you'll have an animal, especially with rear feet, where they will still want to kick a little bit, but they're kind of letting you do it, and you may have to pick up their feet, whether because that's an inspection or to try to trim them a little bit, or at a fair, if a judge asks you to lift up a rear foot. And there's a trick to that, and let me try to set up the camera so I can show you that trick. All right, so if you have an animal that will kind of pick up their rear feet but don't necessarily like it, and you've got to pick them up, there's a way to distract them so that they won't kick, or at least in my experience, every time I've done it, they kick less or they won't kick. You can try it. So same principle, shoulder into the animal, push them over on the other side so they redirect their weight. Squeeze their dew claws, and then instead of just holding their foot, I'm going to do an extra step. So dozer foot. Dozer foot. Dozer foot. Good boy. Scratch right here. If you do that, really fast, they tend to stay still, so that you at least have a few seconds to pick up their feet and either show a judge or take a look at it, or do a little bit of trimming even. Sometimes it's a two-person job, but you can actually do it by yourself, boys, and accomplish what you need to do with picking up feet. All right, so we've brushed them down, we've picked up their feet, all 8 feet, put their collars on. The other thing to take note of, we've got our stick or our whip in our back pocket so our hands are free. The other thing to mention is that there's almost never an occasion where there isn't a training opportunity with working steers and oxen, regardless of whether they're 2 days old or 10 years old. So again, going back to the principle of doing things with a purpose, if I'm going between the animals, picking up feet, brushing them, whatever, or between a cart pole and the animal or a chain, I'm always going to be commanding them if I want them to do something. And that's a good way to start training sidestepping, which we can talk about more in depth later. So obviously if an animal can step to the side, haw, and G, that allows us to do a lot of maneuvering with them on different implements, or even just walking them in the yoke. Stand. So if I'm going to go between them, stand. And I want to be able to get in there without pushing or shoving, I'm just going to give them a command. Dozer, put out. Dozer, put out. Dozer, put out. Put out. Good boy. And I'm not against kind of just tapping them or pinching them a little bit or using the stick, but I want to try to get them used to actually listening to my voice. If I want my off one to put in, digger, put in, digger, put in, digger, put in. Oh, good boy. So that's not a natural thing for cattle to do. It's just like backing up. But it's something that when they're tied up or at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, especially when they're up against the fence or tied up in a barn, you can do that. And part of, you know, sidestepping, training to sidestep is part of that. Actually, the biggest part of it is just getting them to do it when they're tied up or when they're standing still, when you're going in between them and around them, so that I'm not just moving them to get in between them, I'm giving them the command. Dozer put out, digger put out, digger put in, dozer put in. And that way they're getting used to the voice command, and then when we're on a cart or an implement, they do it automatically when I say it. All right, so last step, unyoking. It's just reverse of what I told you before. The way that I do it, again, anticipating the animal's growth, knowing that one day I might have a 10-inch yoke that I have to deal with, animals that are really tall. I take the near bow key out and washer, pull the bow down, lift the yoke up, dozer back up, dozer back up, dozer back up, back up, dozer back, back, good boy, ho. And then put the bow back in, the washer, and the bow key. Doing it this way, now I almost have to have no strength to hold this up, as long as I've got them trained, ho, to hold up the yoke for me. Now I just go to my off steer, take the bow key out, the washer. I could even twist this and put it on the ground if it's a big enough yoke, and then take the bow out from the opposite side and then put it back in. So I think when we're, again, anticipating how big the animals are going to get, what we need to do to make sure that we can still effectively yoke them and unyoke them without a bunch of help, that's, for me, one of the easiest ways to do it. I've also trained them to where you lift up the yoke and they walk through a gate, if you just want to do it that way. Again, it's whatever your preference is, and especially until they get a command right, whether it's yoking, hitching to a cart, gee, haw, whoa. The importance of consistency can't be overstated. Once you've built the trust in the animal, you know that they're going to listen to the command. You know that they know what you're trying to tell them. Then you can mix it up and you can do all kinds of other things. But to me, that's an easy, simple way of unyoking them. It's, you know, it's a way to deal with big animals too. Again, I can't stress enough, think of the size your animals will get over time and make things easier from you, and train your animals in the beginning to pick up their feet, to yoke and unyoke a way that's easier, and then that way it will pay dividends in the future because you won't have to stress about it as much. It'll just be easier to do.